An actual week of rest for Toronto FC ahead of Friday night's trip to New York to take on the Red Bulls. Gareth Wheeler with you, and more selection decisions to be made for Greg Vanney ahead of the Friday night affair against the Red Bulls. 7 changes were made to the team, incredibly, between the Columbus game and the Minnesota game, where Toronto FC were victorious. 3-2 was the final, giving them their 6th win on the trot. Now Greg Vanney's without Sebastian Giovinco and Nick Haglund, 2 forced changes to 11, and squad rotation will continue with the Canadian Championships starting on Tuesday in our nation's capital against the Ottawa Fury. It's going to be a difficult game against the Red Bulls in a place in Red Bull Arena where Toronto FC hasn't had a lot of success over the years. Yes, they won the opening game of last season at Red Bull Arena, a 2-0 final, but they were also run off the field later on about a year ago last May in a 3-0 defeat at the hands of New York as well. So it's going to be a true test. Despite New York's dip in form in recent weeks, they've lost 3 straight, being outscored 8-1 in the process. But Vanney, well aware of the threat that the Red Bulls possess.
They have a good team. They play aggressive. They try to dictate the game with their forward-thinking style, both defensively and in attack. And so they force you sometimes into positions where you're reactive, and you've got to try to stay in front of the game. And they're the epitome of what an aggressive team is in our league.
The mentality and the message for our group is that we're going to play in one of the hardest places in the league, against one of the best teams, and we've got to have every single guy ready to play in a real game for 90 minutes so that we can come away with another good result.
Some good news on the selection front as well. As Drew Moore fit, he will travel to New York with the Reds. So good news across the back line, where Greg Vanney has so many options to choose from. More good news, instead of like last season where Toronto FC were chasing the front runners in the Eastern Conference, they have a 6-point gap between them and second place in the conference, and between them and the Red Bulls, who have both played 12 games, a 9-point cushion. So it's really a chance for TFC to put their foot on the jugular of an Eastern Conference contender come Friday night. Let's get straight into our keys to the match. And our first key is finding a different focal point. Sebastian Giovinco's done a very nice job playing a deeper role in behind Jozy Altidore, coming back and retrieving and taking the ball and attacking opponents on the ground. Just by dropping a little bit deeper, it's opened things up for everyone else. But with no Giovinco available, the question is, who's going to be that player? Who's going to be the creative player that can drop in and find those pockets of space, especially against 2 holding midfielders in New York? It's going to be a congested part of the field. So whether it's Victor Vasquez, Marky Delgado, or someone else, it's going to be incumbent to dominate that part of the pitch. You're going to look for Toss St. Ricketts to starting the match. He's a player that will get in behind the back line. So perhaps it means Jozy Altidore drops back a little bit more, plays more of a target man role, and can kind of occupy that space with wide players playing around him. It's going to be a decisive area of the field, and it's going to be interesting to see how Toronto FC uses the limited space available to them. The second key of the match is dealing with the high pressure. It's trademark of head coach Jesse Marsch and New York Red Bulls teams. They like to pick up the tempo, play at a high pace, and press high up the field. So what does Toronto FC do to combat it? Well, they need to move the ball quickly. They need to be decisive in their actions and not let the press get the better of them. And quite frankly, that high press, when not executed appropriately, opens things up for Toronto FC and other teams to attack on the counter. So perhaps TFC will hang back a little bit more, and it's about breaking out on the counter rather than taking the game to their opponent. It's dealing with the high pressure that's important each and every time you go to Red Bull Arena. The New York Red Bulls have only lost 1 game at home on the season, and were undefeated in 19 before last weekend's 3-1 loss to the Los Angeles Galaxy. And finally, the third key, dealing with Bradley Wright-Phillips, is going to be the right stuff that's needed defensively for Toronto FC. Wright-Phillips has scored more goals against Toronto FC than any player in Red Bulls history. He scored 8 goals, including going off for a hat trick last time out at Red Bull Arena in the 3-0 victory over TFC. He's the fox in the box. He scored 4 goals on the year for New York. He's their leading goal scorer, and quite frankly, their only real true goal scoring threat Losing Nick Hagglund and his physical presence will be a blow, but it's up to Moore and Hernandez and Zavaleta and Mavinga, those types of players to step up, be up for the challenge of the lone striker that the New York Red Bulls will likely play. He's a very good player, one of the best in MLS, despite the criticism that comes his way, and Toronto FC will have to be wary of that threat. I love the Friday night games, and so should you. You can tune in on TSN, listen to TFC and the Red Bulls on TSN Radio, a 7:30 p.m. kickoff in Harrison, New Jersey.